This is the Cook and Joe Show. Ron Cook and Joe Starkey. Sports Radio 93.7, The Fan.
Good morning, sports fans, and welcome to the Cook and Joe Show. Now introducing Mr. Ronald, don't call me Ramon Cook, a 5'9" guard out of Northwestern, eager consumer of free and free light, morning walker, Ron Jovi rocker, Beaver County Hall of Fame, Vinny fan, bare chest tan, all around man, Ron Cook.
Yeah!
And now it's time to introduce a titan in both radio and print, one of the true legends in Pittsburgh media. He stands about 6 feet tall, weighs nearly 300 pounds, from Cortland State, and too many other colleges to list, especially because he failed in all of them. It's Joe, don't call me Joey, Starkey! Oh no, what a look! No!
Get away from me!
He revealed it all!
I poured an ice curtain.
Ron, they wanted to see it. The bare-chested Starkey. They all wanted to see it.
What an introduction, huh?
Bob, that was nice, huh?
I'm choked up on all the flesh that was just singing.
skin.
He did it first. Ron comes in and flash dances you, and then you do it.
Now, I only heard half the intro. Can you repeat that just without the announcer voice? What does that say?
It says, next up is a titan in both radio and print, one of the true legends in Pittsburgh media. He stands about 6 feet tall, weighs nearly 300 pounds, from Cortland State and too many other colleges to list because he failed them all. It's Joe, don't call me Joey, Starkey.
I like that a lot, Ron. Now give Ron his so he can hear it. He was emotional at the time. I don't know if he heard it.
Now introducing Mr. Ronald, don't call me Ramon Cook, a 5'9" guard out of Northwestern.
5'9".
Eager consumer of free and free light. Morning walker, Ron Jovi rocker, Beaver County Hall of Fame, Vinny fan, bare chest tan, all around man.
And I lifted up my shirt to show my bare chest.
Did you?
Yes, I did.
You did, and then you followed
And
by
I
a
didn't
complete
take
strip
it off
tease.
like you did. My chest and stomach much more attractive than yours.
That was.
I would agree with that.
I would agree with that. Yeah.
But I noticed both of you don't manscape. Why not?
Yeah, I've lost interest in everything. Really.
Too much work.
Been married
I haven't
too
shaved
long.
my
It
face,
doesn't matter
let alone
anymore.
my chest.
It doesn't matter anymore, Bob.
Okay.
I'm sure people will be screenshotting different points of that introduction. How are you, Ron? How are you today?
I'm doing really wonderful. That was a nice introduction you had for me. I got up and I am a morning walker today and hope to consume some free and free light later today.
Bob, doing well?
Doing well, yeah. A little tired, but well.
We really didn't discuss Bob's call last week, Ron, on Sid's 500th goal. That was gigantic. And
He was in the building. I was in the building. Memorable night. I thought it was a great night, Bob. One of my highlights of my career being there that night. I thought it was a wonderful event, and the way the players all went out to him. I just thought it was such a cool event.
This has probably happened before, Ron, but I don't remember an entire team just immediately jumping
the
over
way
the
they
boards.
stormed the ice. I mean,
where does that rank on your sports memories? The fact that you called it your personal sports memories.
It's
at the
up
top.
there. I'd have to sit and I haven't been asked that question, so I never really thought of it. But it's certainly something that I'll remember forever. And I felt bad for Ryan, who normally does that job, but he had scheduled a vacation that was supposed to be commensurate with the Olympic break, and then they canceled the Olympics. He got stuck. He didn't want to not get anything for his money, so he went, and so they called me, and I was more than honored. But it just so happened it was the Flyers, and once I knew it was the Flyers and he didn't get it up until then, I had a good feeling it was going to happen that night.
Off the top, brought to you by JP Roofing and Siding, Bob Pompiani. Brought to you by PNC Bank. PNC, make today the day. There's all kinds of things to talk about, but the biggest story, a story that really shook the league. I mean, I saw it on Saturday afternoon. I did a double take. I think a lot of people did when they saw the headline. Brian Flores, Steelers go out and hire him, make him their, senior defensive assistant, a linebackers coach, all-around guy, I think. I think he can help you in any room he walks into. He's been a scout. He's been in charge of personnel before. He's obviously been a head coach. He's been a defensive guy, made the defensive calls. I mean, Belichick designed defenses there. We know that. But Flores for one season. He didn't have the title of coordinator. Neither did Matt Patricia when he started out there. It's like Belichick has you do an apprenticeship for a year or two and then gives you the title. But the guy calling the defenses in that Super Bowl where they shut down the Rams was Brian Flores. Just a gigantic
spent 11
story.
11 years with Belichick.
Giant story. What'd we make of it, Ron?
I liked it. I thought it took some guts on Tomlin's part. The guy, Flores, when he filed this lawsuit, said, I may never coach in the NFL again. Well, he wasn't out of work long. I hope Mike lets him do his thing, and lets him have some input on the defense, lets Terrell Austin have, call the plays. And maybe I just think it's great to bring in a new voice, fresh blood. I think the guy's a good coach. I'm a little concerned. You hear these stories that he was hard to work with, but he's not the head coach. I think it's different when you're an assistant versus the head coach. Obviously, he had trouble with Minkah Fitzpatrick. Minkah couldn't wait to get out of there. He didn't think he was used the right way. But I don't think that's going to be a problem here. I think there's a big difference between being a head coach and an assistant coach. Everything I've heard about him, he's a really solid defensive coach, and heaven knows the Steelers need more of that.
Yeah, and I can't help but wonder if some of that he's hard to work with was manufactured by the Dolphins to put out there to make him look bad, honestly.
It could very well be. That was not a good relationship. It deteriorated over time. But this is a good football hire, first and foremost. I mean, and I'm sure Kevin Colbert, when he talks to people today, will tell them that. It's a football hire. We wanted another good, people have been calling for fresh ideas, different set of eyes, whatever you want to label it as. And he provides that. He gives you something. He also knows how to not only design defenses, I suspect, but also call the right plays at the right time. We saw that, and you mentioned the Super Bowl, which is a great point, but also in the Ravens game this year on a Thursday night, he shut down Lamar Jackson, and they did it very well.
Gave other teams a blueprint.
They did.
For doing that.
I think that's
Ravens.
a great thing. So,
the Steelers
honestly,
have done a pretty good job against Lamar Jackson,
yes,
too.
but my point is he
knows,
he can understand the assignment and figure it out, and I think anytime you get more help that way, that defensive staff is a lot better than it was, and I think it should help a lot of their players. And he doesn't have to deal with Minkah necessarily because he's a linebacker coach, at least on paper, but I'm sure they'll talk it out and get through it.
I think that part of it could be a little bit awkward, but who cares? He's a position coach with the linebackers, I actually think it'll probably be diffused by a joke or two with him and Tomlin and Minkah. You know what? That situation played out in such a way that I think both parties left happy, did it not? This guy doesn't want to play as a linebacker for us. So he wants out. Let's deal him. Let's get a first-round pick. It might be a little awkward. I don't see it as being a big deal. Is the overall hire a big deal, Ron, in terms of Mike Tomlin maybe not calling the plays on defense? See, I don't think much has changed in that regard. I love having another defensive mind in the room. But how much influence will these guys have on Mike Tomlin, or is it just going to be the same, and is that a good or bad thing?
Well, I hope it's not the same because I think that would be a bad thing. But I don't know. We're going to have to wait and see how it plays out. Is he going to let Terrell Austin call the plays? And Mike obviously has a heavy hand in the game planning, just like you mentioned, Belichick with Flores. I don't know if it's going to change. It may not. And I think, part of the deal is Tomlin's given a lifeline to a black coach, and I think that's significant here. He had never had a coordinator who was black in his first 14 years on the job. I asked him about this. I think I'm the last guy to talk to him about the lack of black head coaches, and he said he's highly sensitive to it, but he believes in promoting from within first, and he mentioned losing Scotty Montgomery and Ray Horton, and then obviously the fire with Kirby Wilson. Now he has promoted Terrell Austin and brought in a guy who, maybe other teams wouldn't have touched. I think it's a big deal all the way around, and I think it's a good move for the Steelers, and I give Tomlin a lot of credit, Bob.
Yeah, I do too. And I think, again, it's a new set of eyes watching over things. He'll bring ideas, and I think it's important to know that when you look at his history, as one of you guys said, 11 years under Bill Belichick, he moved his way right up into that position, and that's hard to do, I would imagine, with a guy like Belichick. But if you impress him enough, he'll give you the opportunities, and he did, and he took it to my. And honestly,
only problem with that is not all of Belichick's disciples have turned out to be very good.
Yeah, but in his
including
case,
the one he mentioned before, Patricia,
well, he
right?
was terrible.
Yeah.
But that's in
and
Detroit.
Josh
too.
McDaniels, to an extent, he's going to get yet another try. But here, the thing about this is I thought he did a good job in Miami. They won 7 in a row at this point this year. You could tell me about the competition. It wasn't that great. Well, whatever. They won 7 in a row to get back on track and knock on a playoff. And if you discount the first how many games that they lost on there when he took over, I mean, he's had a pretty good run as a head coach, and I suspect he will be a head coach again.
In which case, by the way, the Steelers would get 2 compensatory picks.
That's another little hidden
in
stat.
the third round. I
Yeah.
believe both third round. So that makes it smart,
Well,
too.
the Rams have done that compensatory stuff to their advantage. They've loaded up on picks anywhere from the 3rd to the 7th round, and they've hit on a lot of those. So.
Is this sort of also a form of a middle finger to the league? You're going to have a guy,
I
a
don't.
guy here who's suing the NFL, who's now on your staff that maybe, I might even say probably nobody else would have hired at least this season, who is probably seen by a lot of owners and coaches as radioactive at this point, and he's not withdrawing the suit. You're going to see a lot of things come out. This guy's going to be testifying in one form or another against the NFL while he's coaching the Steelers. I saw it somewhat as that, and I liked it because I'm not a big fan of Goodell or the NFL and the way they do business. I think they're a bottom-line business, whether that comes at the expense of player safety or anything else, going all the way back to Spygate, through the Ray Rice thing, through anything else you want to mention. They're after just a bottom line here. I don't like the way they do business. I love the fact that this tweaked them.
I didn't look at it that way, Joe, as much as you did. Maybe I just think it's Tomlin thinking he's doing what's right for the Steelers. And if it's
Can it be both?
Well, sure, it can be, but I don't know if that was his motivation that he sat down with Art II and said, you know what, let's just stick it to the league here.
Does it matter what their motivation was? They did stick it to the league. I think their motivation was to bring in a good football guy, too.
That's all I'm saying. And if it sticks it to the league, that's okay. But, Tomlin's had a history of doing this sort of thing. When I wrote about this Saturday, I brought up the Michael Vick thing. Remember how unpopular that was? When he brought in Vick. Now, Vick had been a place or two since he had been in the dogfighting ring, but I remember the outrage over that. And Vick ended up helping him win a game in San Diego. Then the outrage wasn't there much anymore.
Was there any part of this that you believe was them bringing in Brian Flores because nobody else would?
No, I don't look at it. Well, I think Tomlin thinks he was a good coach, but I think that was the reason why, not because nobody else would, because he wanted him on his staff, Bob.
I do too. I think, and yes, there may be a part of that goes to what you were saying, Joe, but I think most of it is a good football coach that he admired, that he wanted to bring on because there was an opportunity to bring him on.
A good football coach that nobody else would have brought on.
I don't know
right
about
now.
that. I think stats were
Would you
full.
be willing to bet that another team would have brought him on?
I would agree with Joe on this one.
Well, maybe not now, but eventually they would. I think somebody would.
Once the lawsuit against the NFL is finished.
And by the way, we get a lot of talk about whether or not this is a distraction. To me, this is in no way anything about Pittsburgh. So therefore, it will go on. I'm sure when he finally talks to the media, he will say what he has to say, and he'll quickly dismiss it as it's in the hands of my lawyers. I have nothing to say. And at that point, there's not much you can say. So then they'll keep their business in their building, and I don't think it'll be a distraction. I really don't. I think those of us out here who talk about it will talk about it, but so what? That's happened before. And I just think this is a very good football mind that they could utilize to their advantage, and Lord knows they need some help over there with developing some of their younger players, most specifically Devin Bush, and I think he could help Devin.
Yeah, I think he can walk into any room and contribute, literally any room, including quarterbacks, to go in and talk about what defenses will be trying to do to torture them, all the way to scouting, anything. I think like any corporation, you get somebody who's this good and you make them into sort of a jack of all trades. I think it's great. But I can't help but also notice that this is the franchise that instituted the Rooney Rule, a Rooney Rule that's been, depending on your point of view, either abandoned, distorted,
or failed.
Any one of the above, take your pick. I can't help but notice that this is the franchise that hired the guy that's suing the league for racial discrimination.
But I also, that's fine. And you can have that as a component, and you would want that if that's what you believe. And I do believe they believe. But first and foremost, they wouldn't have brought him in if he was not a good coach.
I agree with that.
It has nothing to do with that. It's all about, is he a good coach? Can he help us? Yes. All right, we'll take the other stuff too.
Okay.
I
don't know. Are there other good football coaches out there that you could bring on and put them in the same role
He's the
right
best
now?
hire in my view since Mike Munchak, who had the same kind of credentials. Head coach brought in and had an immediate impact on their team. And I think how many of them fit that category? How many head coaches have been out there who still are young, have done a good job in my view, and are available? Not many.
Yeah, I don't know. What'd you write today, Ron? I didn't see the whole thing. Did
I
you
wrote
write that was part of the motivation or the result that this particular franchise brought him in?
Well, no. Well, I wrote about it was in Sunday's paper, by the way. I wrote about just the fact that Tomlin is very aware of the situation with black head coaches.
So did that have something to do with the hire then, or no?
I think it did, but I
Okay.
think most important. But I don't think it had anything to do to stick it to the league. I
Well,
think.
fine. Take away that part, but you're saying that it was partially motivated
Oh,
by
I
that.
absolutely
Okay.
think that. I think the main part though is he thought he was a good coach. Probably saw that no one else was going to give him an opportunity, and so jumped on the chance to bring in a quality
And created
coach.
a position for him,
And create-
basically.
Well, I mean, Butler coached the outside linebackers. I think Keith had defensive coordinator, and I don't know what this means for Jerry Osafsky. Is he going to be out here, or is Flores going to only be the outside linebackers coach? I don't know.
Yeah, I have to believe that
Austin
part of it
also
was-
had that title of senior defensive
Yes.
assistant / secondary.
Right. I think both those things can be true. That Mike Tomlin sees a guy who is a very good football man, very sharp guy, and a good coach, and that this was him saying, "We'll take him. Rest of the league, you won't. We will." I think that was part of it too.
I think that's part of it too. And
I agree.
especially to throw a lifeline to a black head coach who wants to be a head coach again. And I think Tomlin's history has had something to do with it. Never had a black coordinator in 14 years. Isn't the path to a head coach is through a coordinator?
Yeah, I mean, but then again, a couple of guys were thrust on him depending on he didn't have an opportunity to hire one in at least two occasions.
Well, I mean, he had
depending
Keith
on
Butler.
how you view
I mean,
it.
I don't know that he had to keep Keith Butler.
No,
Keith
he
Butler
had
could have left.
opportunities, but he
Right.
also
an
twice
offensive coordinator too. So
he also twice had people thrust upon him. So that takes away two opportunities to hire.
Right.
The
And as
coordinator
Ron
you
said,
want.
he had a couple of guys who he groomed or wanted to
well,
groom,
I think
and then they
Kirby
couldn't
Wilson
do
was
it.
in line. To
He
be
was.
the coordinator.
And then that tragedy
The
happened
fire.
there.
He's coaching the Maulers now, right?
Yeah. How about that?
How about that?
412-928-9370. Bottom line is, if I'm running a corporation, so to speak, and I can bring in a guy like Brian Flores, I think it's a really, really good move. I don't know how much power he's going to have on defense. That's also true. This is Mike Tomlin's defense, right?
Always has been.
Bob?
Needs to be better.
Yes, but I think you have two. Like, if you look at the top three now, with Terrell Austin in there, still to me very highly regarded, has had this responsibility. You got three pretty good defensive minds now. There should be no excuse for seeing development of players, and that's where I put this mostly. It's not so much play calling as it is developing players who can execute the calls that you play. And I think a lot of the times, they're guys who haven't benefited, and now they should. I think it'll be if Devin Bush 2 years removed from an ACL, right? That's what it'll be. With this guy there, knowing how much he has to play for, doesn't have a good year, I'd be shocked.
So you think he can have that big of an influence on one
as
guy?
I said, he's entering a big part of his, money stage of his career too. And 2 years removed from the surgery, everything adds up to him being what they thought he was in his first year.
Let's talk about that a little bit. Whether Brian Flores, where exactly is he going to have most of his influence? On the linebackers? Is he an outside, inside, all the linebackers?
I don't know what the deal is with Osafsky. When they brought in Austin, Tom Bradley was also coached, and they gave one safeties, one cornerbacks, and then Bradley left, and it was all Terrell Austin with the secondary. I don't know if it's going to be just the outside linebackers with Flores or not. We'll have to find out.